So my name is Aslak Felin. I'm a strategic research manager at iRaise, which is a research institute in Sweden. We work with societal challenges and increasing competitiveness of the Swedish industry and startups. I worked within innovation for a very long time. I started my company right after I was done with my master's within innovation technology management. Then I worked as a associate professor at a school of innovation and entrepreneurship at Sahlgrenska, which is a university hospital, and so I taught there some doctors, nurses, dietitians, and lawyers. It was an interesting mix of group working together to solve problems together, getting their masters in innovation. After that, I went to iRaise, and this is I love this subject, and I love to talk about it. I spend time on Clubhouse to talk about it, and I find every excuse to do it. But I'm going to really keep this short so that we can spend time getting to know each other later in that session that's coming after this. So I'm going to try to keep this quite relaxed because it's, something that you don't have to be here. But I'll give you kind of a quick story. This is the Fable, a Hindu fable written by John Godfrey. I'm not going to read the actual poem. I'm just going to paraphrase it to you. Some of you might know it, but it has a great point when it comes to unmet needs. So the point of it really is that, I'll give you the story real quick. The premise is basically you have 7 men from Hindustan, and they come to this phenomena that they start describing. They never met it before. One of them touches the side of the elephant and calls it, well, this is a wall. I mean, this is a clay wall. I've touched this many times. While the other one feels something pointy and says, well, this is a spear. I've felt spears many times, while the other one feels something that's kind of slingery and round. Well, this is a snake. Or they feel something that's quite large and has a lot of weight on it. Well, this is a tree trunk. And then there's the tail, and this is obviously, I don't remember what that one was. Anyways, they're describing something from their perspective. And this is the problem often with unmet needs, that we describe things from our current norms, values, and perspectives. And we usually end up doing it from that situation. We're going to do a little practice around that very soon. And the story goes that the elephant actually makes a noise. It toots with its trunk, and then the blind men can confused and say, well, the snake obviously has a trumpet, and this wall obviously has a hole, and the wind is blowing through it. And the point here is that we have these mental models that we're stuck with. Mental models are things that are thinking patterns and values that are very sticky, and they're hard to get rid of. They're the way we see the world and so forth. And we need to be very cognizant of that to be able to define unmet needs in a good way. So here's a little exercise to you, and this is another story from David Doff. He's an anthropologist, and he asked the Himba tribe to look at these squares, and would ask them to say on the screen, do you see anything different in these? Can you see any kind of difference in these? And they were not able to point out that there's a blue square on this screen. And why is that? Why can't they see the blue square? The reason they can't see the blue square is because they didn't have a word for it. They don't have a word for the color blue, which says to me something about, well, and this is going to innovation research and perception, is that we do not have always the words to describe the right unmet need. We need to maybe innovate even how we describe things. We can't always ask the customer because they can't describe what they need. So we have to be very cognizant of those fallacies that the human mind puts on us, that we might have the words, or we might not have the right values or worldview of things, so we can describe things the best way. So here's an exercise that I would ask you to do. Is there anything different in these squares? And there is, but you might not see it. The Himba tribe would pick it out right away like that, but we cannot. So this is very real that we don't know how all the reason they could pick it out is because the Himba tribe have multiple words for the color green, but we don't. So just for not helping you out, so you won't get bugged out about this, it's right there, the difference. But we can't see it. So and there's an interesting research coming from Boston Consulting Group saying that the biggest challenges, and this was an interview of all the CEOs, the biggest challenge is to selecting the right idea to commercialize. Also another problem, of course, slow development times. But this is played to this very point at how do you really know that this is the right idea to work with? It's really hard. It's super hard. And this is what this project is going to be, or this course is going to be about, is how can you figure out what are the root causes? So you don't just pick the symptom that you just observe on face value, but you kind of try to dig a little deeper, understand what is going on, why, what is the real problem we're trying to solve, and what is the underlying mechanisms around that. This is the innovation funnel that's used as an ISO. Today you can become a innovation leader. There's actually certification you get. I did that. It was the first. I was the first kind of cohort went through that. My problem with this was that it's starting with the idea. It is not starting with an unmet need or a problem. And I said this to them. I think they changed it, not because of I said it. I think other people's also lifted it, but it's just gives you the picture of how we humans are very idea driven. We always like the idea. We think, oh, let's do ideation, but we should focus on the problem description and really understand what the problem is. In fact, there's some research showing that 50% of project failure is because of insufficient problem definition. And of course, those who've worked in healthcare know that all the IT projects almost fail. Maybe only 10% can make it through that they are implemented. And it's because there isn't a good enough problem definition. And these are called wicked problems because problems are intertwined with so many different levels. There's a kind of the hospital perspective. You have the doctor, you have the patient, you have the administrators, you have payment models. There's so many things that are making this problem materialize in our existence. And we need to take into consideration all of it and really start picking apart to see where is an underlying mechanism that we can start pushing at. Is it a legal issue, or it might not be anything to do with technology, although technology can help. So I think there's quite a big misunderstanding that if we just talk with people and we go with our feelings, that we'll know what to do. There's intuition, which is usually what design thinking does, but there's a lot more to do with system thinking that we need to think about. And that's how we need to start thinking about problems and unmet needs, to pick it apart and understand what are the underlying problems, what are the underlying drivers. So, and there's different kinds of problems. There's simple, complicated, there's complex and wicked problems. With the simple problems, that's like, I'm gonna make food, I'm gonna follow a recipe, A to B. Complicated, I'm gonna start a new way of doing things. I'm not sure how it looks like when I'm done, but I'm gonna explore it. Complex, we don't know the ins and the outs. There's like the unknown unknowns. And that's often that we're kind of within healthcare. There's so many things. So it requires a little different thinking, and you have to think about what is the root issues. How am I doing on time, Vincent? Just so I won't go through, you'll have like 30 seconds?
1 minute.
1 minute? Okay, good, nice. So, the issue here is that when we work with unmet needs, we start with a simple observation. That's what we do as humans, but we need to become cognizant of what's guiding our observation. What theory do we use? What lens do we use to observe things? So we have to be aware of our mental models when we see things. So we have to start seeing things as complicated relationships, so we can create from the information, the observation, knowledge, we can start creating wisdom. And this is actually the whole problem with also, when you think about it, with AI. AI is often, let's create data, let's do something with AI, but we don't define what problem are we going to solve with it that well. It's something that I talk with Ericsson and Spotify AI researchers, saying the problem is not anymore what we can do, it's who's defining the problems that are worth solving. So, and this comes to play with, of course, Mr. Trump. He thought it was full when he came into play to his scene. This is the grandest entire day of his life, and he said to everyone that it was full. It was more full than Obama. In fact, it was not. It's all about perception. And I think we all have this issue, and we have to be very cognizant of it. Basically, that the theories that we use is that guides our perception. So whatever theory we have is going to help us actually create the observations and the problem definitions. So we have to be very aware of that.